Welcome to the Building Confident Readers TutorMate training. This 30-minute session will cover the following topics. Phonics, what is it and how does it help children learn to read? The TutorMate activities, feedback and how it helps us provide you with a better experience, TutorMate reading levels and colours and story options, developing skills for fluent reading, working with a struggling or reluctant reader, how to use notes, classroom life, and school visits. If you're a returning tutor, then please note that we have made some updates to the platform as a result of your feedback, which we hope you will enjoy. Please don't worry about making notes during this training. You will be able to review this video and others in the knowledge base at your convenience. The base also contains lots of useful external expert resources to help you understand how best to support an emerging reader. If you've had any exposure to 5 to 7-year-olds, you might have heard the term phonics, but many adults don't really know what phonics is. Please be reassured that we're not expecting you to be an expert in phonics. That is the teacher's role. Your role is to provide supported reading practice for a young child and inspire their love of books and reading confidence. But having an understanding of the role phonics plays in early reading will help you to support the pupil you will be reading with throughout the school year. Phonics is a way of teaching children how to read and write. It helps children hear, identify, and use different sounds that distinguish one word from another in the English language. Introducing young children to the joy and wonder of books requires a systematic teaching of phonics, a mandatory part of the curriculum in English schools. To understand phonics, it helps to think of the English language as a code. Knowing the sounds of individual letters and how those letters sound when they're combined helps children decode words as they read and write. Phonics involves matching the sounds of spoken English with individual letters or groups of letters. For example, the sound k can be spelled as C, K, CK, or CH. Teaching children to blend the sounds of letters together helps them decode unfamiliar words by sounding them out. For example, when a child is taught the sounds for the letters T, P, A, and S, they can start to build up the words tap, taps, pat, pats, and sat. It's useful to know that the children you're supporting will be using specific vocabulary in the classroom to help them identify parts of words. This vocabulary can seem rather technical to someone who is unfamiliar with early reading instruction. We've included a PDF with links to videos about phonics and a glossary of terms in the knowledge base. When working with your pupil, you may find it helpful to use these terms. Here are a few examples of some of the terms pupils will be familiar with. The first is blending. Children will identify and blend sounds to make a word. These sounds are also known as phonemes. For example, the word snap has 4 phonemes: s, n, a, p. When working with your student, try saying, "Let's work on the sounds in this word and then we can blend them together." Digraphs and trigraphs are 2 or 3 letters which together make one sound, such as the E sound in the word seen or the I in sigh. There are 3 different types of digraphs: vowel digraphs like seen, tool, or sneak; consonant digraphs such as the sh sound in shine; and split digraphs. Split digraphs work as a pair to make one sound but are separated within the word. Words like late or right are examples of a split digraph. Now we've introduced you to phonics, let's turn to the types of activities you can do as part of your TutorMate session. Prior to your session, the classroom computer will be sitting in a virtual queue waiting for you to connect. When your call is answered and you indicate that your student is available, your computer connects with the classroom computer in the virtual queue. Unlike screen sharing, your computer and the classroom computer are independent even though they display the same material. As the tutor, you control the session and decide what activities to show to your student. When working with your student, there may be times when it is unclear if they are viewing the same material as you. To view a representation of the child's screen, click on the icon at the top of the screen and a window will appear which shows you what a child ought to see on their screen. This will help you to direct them if they're unsure of what to do, or if it's unclear they are viewing what you sent. This feature is a guide only and should not replace reaching out to chat support for assistance. If the child reports that they are unable to see anything at their end, or are seeing something different to what the window displays to you, it may be necessary for chat support to remote into the pupil's computer to troubleshoot a technical problem. The first step to getting started with the activities will be to select your student's reading level. This is done for both flashcards and stories. Reading levels are set by the teacher and will be listed above the reading level buttons. At the beginning of the year, each pupil is assessed by their teacher and assigned a reading level based on word and phonic knowledge, comprehension and fluency. The pupils selected will be emerging readers who have mastered letter names and letter sounds and are now ready to focus on learning to sound out and read simple words. With your support, these pupils will show significant reading gains and an improvement in confidence with the additional practice you provide each week. Making sure pupils are reading at the correct reading level throughout the year is important to their success. If a child struggles consistently with the text and gets frustrated, they're likely to want to give up. The opposite is also true. If a pupil is reading material easily and understands the meaning of what they've read, it's time to move them to more challenging reading material to fend off boredom. To ensure the content of the stories found in our program are properly levelled, IFL follows the book band reading levels used by most schools, with coloured levels that range from pink to purple. This range represents beginning reading texts through to early Year 2 reading texts. Reading at the correct reading level is important for young readers, so how do you know when to move a pupil to the next level? The goal is for your pupil to read to you at his or her instructional level. That means that they should know approximately 80% of the words in a story and can successfully read with your help and support. If the pupil is flying through the text and they understand the meaning of what they have read, then it is time to consider moving them to the next reading level in the program. Teachers may also update pupil reading levels, but if a teacher doesn't move the pupil's reading level after a 30-day period, the system will prompt you to move the student to the next reading level. If you find the material is too difficult for your student, you can always move them back to the previous reading level and then try advancing them again the following week. Now let's turn to a demonstration of the tutoring activities and guidance on how to structure your tutoring sessions. While we have suggestions about the time you could spend on each activity, do remember that this is not set in stone. Feel free to experiment with what works best for you and the child you're supporting. The first activity in the sequence is flashcards. We recommend you spend 5 minutes at the beginning of your session on flashcards. Flashcards has two functions. It gives children an opportunity to practice sight words, and it tests their knowledge of words that follow similar patterns. Both are learned skills that will help increase reading proficiency. Select the colour level indicated when you launch flashcards. If your pupil masters flashcards at that level, feel free to move them to the next colour level. Keep in mind that your pupil's flashcard level may be more advanced than their reading level. Our platform only contains a limited set of sight words as flashcards. Your pupil may master these quickly, so once your student is reading at level orange, you can skip the flashcard activity entirely and focus more time on reading. When you click on a word, your student will see the same word on their screen. Each time your pupil gets a word correct, mark the word green by clicking on the green button. If your student struggles with a word or gives an incorrect response, mark the card red by clicking on the red button. Your student will only see the words you show them and will not see the words you have colour-coded in green or in red. To confirm your student has received the flashcard you sent, watch for the Sending to and Received by prompt. This feature is available for every activity and will help you gauge when the student can see the material you sent. The next activity in the series is stories. Reading stories out loud is the most important thing your student will do, as it's where he or she gets a chance to practice. You should ideally spend 15 to 20 minutes of your session each week reading stories, but each child will be different and some may not be able to concentrate on reading for that long earlier in the year. When you're ready to read stories, click on the story icon from the activity menu. Select the appropriate reading level and click Continue to open the story library. A library of level books will be displayed in the TutorMate Stories tab. Depending on what level your student is reading at, there are two types of stories to choose from: simple stories and reading stories. We'll come back to the difference between these later. The stories in the tab that you select, whether it is the Simple Stories tab or the Reading Stories tab, will be visible in rows on both your screen and on the student's screen. Have fun with your pupil, choosing which story they want to read and guessing what they might be about. The student can tell you which book he or she would like to read by giving you the number next to the book title or describing the picture. You will select that story and your pupil can begin reading. Let's take a look at a typical story and make sure it's clear what you do and what your pupil will see. When you choose a story from the library, the child will see page 1 of that story on their screen. While you can advance the stories forward using the arrow keys, your pupil will not have that option and can only see the page number. You might decide to look through or walk through the whole book with your pupil before reading it. You can mention some of the key words and give them a sense of the story before they read it, which can boost the confidence of early or reluctant readers. Do remember to use the pictures in each story too. When you start to read each page, you can help your pupil prepare to read by asking them to look at the picture and describe what they think the story is about, or what might happen next. You may also want to take turns reading with your pupil if they often struggle. You could alternate reading each page. This is a good way of taking the pressure off and modelling fluent, expressive reading. As you read, you may want your student to focus on a particular word. You can do this in 2 ways. First, you can click on a word on your screen which will highlight the word on the child's view of the page. Or you can show that word to your student by typing in the message box. For example, if your student is struggling with the word sing, you can type the word or its individual letters in the message student box and send that word to your student. Remind them to sound it out using their phonics, but don't hesitate to give them the word if they seem stuck. When you send the word to your pupil in this way, it will appear for them as if spoken by a small owl in the top left of the screen. Asking them what the owl is saying is a good way to check they can see the word you've sent. Asking questions about the story is a good way to see if your student is able to remember key points of the story. But helping a child develop their comprehension skills is about much more than asking questions to test their memory. Comprehension is about developing connections between what they have seen in the book and the world they understand. Can the student tell you about the story in their own words, or make connections between the story and their own experiences? How would they feel if they were a character in this story? Having empathy with characters helps create thoughtful readers. Not all stories include comprehension questions, but feel free to spend time asking your pupil about the story when you're finished reading. Did they like it? If so, why? You may also want to recap or retell a story at the end as a fun activity. It's a great skill for young readers to develop. If a story does include comprehension questions, they will be presented on your screen at the end of the story. The pupil's screen will display pictures to help them remember what the story is about. In addition to providing stories for practicing reading and fluency skills, we also provide students with word games designed to build their knowledge of words and word parts. You can fit these in between stories to break up reading, or offer children a chance to do them before you say goodbye for the week. Feel free to experiment. There are 4 word activities to choose from: word sort, 3 in a row, mystery word, and word world. What follows is a brief look at each game. To view step-by-step instructions, click on the directions link at the top of each page. In the word sort activity, students will practice sorting words based on their word endings. This is great practice for students learning how to sound out words. As the tutor, you will select the word from the list of 9 words you'll see above coloured boxes. Your student will see the same word on screen, but will only see 1 word, not the menu that you have. Ask your student where the word belongs based on the word ending. Once you click on the appropriate box, the word will populate and the student will see the same word on their screen. Once all the words have been placed in a box, draw your student's attention to the similarities of the words. Then ask your student to read the words in each box. 3 in a row is a favourite activity for many students. This additional exposure to words will help encourage fluent reading and word identification. When you're ready to begin, determine who will be a cross and who will be a nought. Notice each box has a word. Your pupil can see the same words as you. Taking turns, you and your student will try to be the first to get 3 crosses or noughts in a row, up, down, across, or diagonally. When you place a cross or a nought in the box, your student will see the same thing on their screen. Mystery word is a fun way of learning vocabulary and will help students remember the spelling of new words. To begin, think of a word or use one of the suggested words found on the right side of your screen. The student cannot see these words. When you have a word in mind, click on the number of letters of the word. Your student will see the same number of blank spaces on their screen. As your student begins to guess letters, click on the letter on the keyboard. This will highlight that letter for both you and your student. Please put your cursor on the appropriate line and select the letter using your computer keyboard. Your student will see each letter on their screen. You may find your student needs a little help getting started with this activity. Consider filling in the first letter or offering a clue to help your student guess the word. Word World is a fun way for pupils to practice spelling and word patterns. To play, spin the wheel to begin. A word will appear on your screen, but the pupil will not see the word. The spinner will stop on a letter, which will populate on the pupil's screen. Click No to continue spinning until there are enough letters for the pupil to guess what the word might be, or until the pupil can read the word on the screen. Click Yes to show a new word and play the game again. The whiteboard simulates a magnetic board and is great for practicing spelling, difficult words, or making up fun sentences. Type a word or phrase in the field at the bottom of the screen. When you click Submit Word, your student will see the same word or phrase on their screen. You can also move words and phrases around by dragging anywhere on the board. Why not make up a story together each week? You will always have a chance to practice activities prior to your session using the practice tutoring tool that we covered in the first training. While it may be tempting to spend more time with your student, please end your session promptly after 30 minutes. There may be another tutor scheduled immediately after your session, and the system only allows for one tutoring session to be running at a time. To disengage from the session, click the red End link at the top of the page. After each and every session, we ask that you provide us with brief feedback on your tutoring experience. While feedback after every session may seem unnecessary, it does provide us with helpful information that might impact your next session as well as the sessions of your fellow teammates. We've tried to make it quick and easy and appreciate your entries. Once you click End Session after leaving feedback, you will be redirected to the homepage and can log out of the application. Earlier, we mentioned that there are two types of stories in our platform to choose from: simple stories and reading stories. Simple stories appear at the lower reading levels and contain short words that the child should know at this reading level using phonic patterns that they have already been taught, like hat and pat. For unconfident readers, this is a good place to start as the text is simple. Remember that for early readers, even very brief words can be challenging to read. When reading simple stories, we want students to gain confidence and practice reading with fluency. Reading fluently means that a child can read without having to stop and sound out words, and as they progress, they can also start to use expression to enliven the story. Reading stories use both words that students should know and also those that they are learning in Year 1 or 2. By reading these stories, students are increasing their word knowledge and practicing newly learned words. At the higher levels, reading stories include very engaging texts covering varied topics, many of which are sponsored by our partners. Some introduce science-related content about the Earth, space exploration, and chemistry. Let's talk about how you can make the best use of your time with your pupil. The time you spend practicing reading with your pupil, encouraging them and praising their efforts, will create a safe environment where they can learn and grow. Don't underestimate the impact you will have on your pupil. Something as simple as sharing your own enthusiasm and love for reading is a powerful tool. While we're not asking you to be an expert in phonics or early education, it is helpful to understand the skills pupils need as they work towards becoming better readers. Once children have mastered letter names and sounds, there are 4 components to becoming a proficient reader. The first is having a strong oral vocabulary. The second is having enough knowledge of the world to give context to what the pupil is reading. The third is being able to read a passage fluently, and the fourth is being able to comprehend that passage. These are all interrelated, and during the course of the year, you will help your pupil build these skills. One skill we suggest you focus on is fluency. Fluency is the ability to read a passage with reasonable speed and expression so that it sounds natural. When reading fluently, the pupil doesn't need to expend too much processing power on a particular word and can think about the story in its totality. The key skill a pupil will need in order to read fluently is called word attack. Word attack is learning how to read words that are not easily read by sight. For these words, the pupil needs to have some form of phonics-based strategy in order to sound out the word. As we covered earlier in the training, children in UK schools are taught to read using a system called phonics. Phonics focuses on the sounds of letters in a word rather than their alphabet names, as it is easier for children to understand. Remember that the children you're supporting will be using specific vocabulary in the classroom to help them identify parts of words. If you're able to use some of this vocabulary when working with your student, that can help guide them. Remember to visit the knowledge base for additional links and videos about phonics. Let's look at a simple sentence. I have a plan. The pupil will likely know the first 3 words by sight. However, the last word, plan, the pupil is unlikely to know by sight. In order to understand the sentence, the pupil will need to know some kind of phonics strategy to sound out the word. The word attack strategy that is used in all English primary schools is for children to sound out p, l, a, n, using single sounds or phonemes, and then blend them to read the word. So, when a pupil comes across a difficult word, encourage them to use their phonic knowledge and blend the phonemes together to read the word. Some pupils struggle to remember when to use which sound for a letter, so be patient with them and encourage them to experiment when a word that they're reading does not sound right in context. While we want pupils to give the word a try, we don't want them to dwell too long on a word they just can't seem to identify. Ask your pupil to continue reading the sentence and then return to the difficult word. There may be a cue in the story that will help the pupil identify the word. If they still can't manage it, please do just read it for them. Initially, many pupils chosen to participate in TutorMate may struggle from a lack of confidence, and you may encounter children who are very shy and hesitant to read out loud. Remember that the children chosen for TutorMate often find reading difficult and so need extra encouragement to persevere. If you're supporting a child who is at the very early stages of learning to read, it's important to try to build enjoyment and excitement into your reading sessions. Talking about the pictures in a book, enjoying listening to someone else read, and taking pleasure in the characters and storyline of a book are equally important during this early stage of learning. As you read with your pupil week after week, you might find the strategies helpful when looking for new ways to keep the child interested in reading. Spend some time reviewing the title page. Ask the pupil questions about what they see on the cover illustration. Can they make a prediction about what the story is about? Take a picture walk through the book. Go through each page of the book and talk about the illustrations. What does your reader notice in the pictures? What clues can they spot that might suggest what the story is about? Another option is to create your own story. Go through the story and create your own version of the story together. Does your reader have a story they love to read? If so, use the revisit and repeat technique. Each time your reader revisits the same story, they become more and more familiar with the sounds that are repeated throughout the story. This repetition helps children remember and sound out words that may have been difficult the first time they read the story. If a child is struggling or seems reluctant, please stick with them and offer them encouragement and praise. It may be that you need to read with your pupil for less than 30 minutes in the beginning to build up their concentration. You might want to take turns reading if they struggle and get them to spot any mistakes you make. Our monthly newsletters will also offer you a variety of tips and tricks to use as the year progresses. As you work with your pupil, keep in mind that rewarding their success is an important component in building reading confidence. It will boost their self-esteem and make them feel great. While verbal praise is very motivating and should be given often, we also provide several high-five pop-ups you can use to further reward your students' hard work. When giving praise, explain what it was they did so well. Let them know why you feel it deserves praise. Remember, it's not just about the result, it's about the effort. Sometimes you might find that your session coincides with another class activity that your pupil is keen to participate in and which they ask you if they can go back to. Please don't be disheartened if this happens. If this happens regularly, send a quick message to the teacher and consider changing the session time if you can. Occasionally you may find your struggling reader may appear to be uninterested or be easily distracted. They may even tell you they don't want to read and display challenging behaviour. Do remember that being a child is hard work. Each day they're learning a huge amount about the world around them. Keep in mind that something may have happened in their day to unsettle them. Perhaps they had an argument with a best friend. What can seem like a small thing to an adult could be upsetting to a child. If a child's behaviour is challenging in a session, try following these steps. Make a simple, clear request. Gemma, shall we focus on reading the story? Make a closed request. Thank you for focusing so well on the story, Gemma. Frame a positive choice. Gemma, are you able to focus on reading with me, or do we need to stop reading for today? If your session doesn't go to plan, remember it's not likely to be about you. Reflect afterwards on whether you could have done anything differently, and if over time you feel that you're not making progress, contact the child's teacher for advice using the messaging part of the platform. You and your assigned pupil will work together for the entire school year. As you work together, be sure to document their progress in the notes section of the portal. You will be amazed at the growth your student will achieve by the end of the school year. Please remember that the notes section is for your reference only and a good way to track what you've worked on each week. You can take notes during a session or after the session is over by clicking on the notes link. The child's teacher will not see these notes. When calling the classroom for your session, keep in mind that primary school classrooms are very busy and can be unpredictable. Young pupils are always on the move, which means that your calls may not be answered right away and may occasionally be missed. Please try calling back if you do not receive an answer on the first attempt. Sometimes it takes a little longer for the phone greeter to answer the call. If you still do not get an answer after the second attempt, contact the support desk so that they can check the equipment for you. Year 1 and Year 2 classrooms can also get very noisy, and some classroom activities can create a lot of commotion. If you find that a noisy classroom consistently interferes with your tutoring session, please report this to live chat support, as they may be able to help. Do also let us know by clicking on the relevant disrupted category in the top of the screen. If needed, we may ask you to consider moving your weekly session to a different time slot. You can also ask the pupil to raise the quiet please sign to remind the teacher that he or she is in a session. A pupil being absent or an unplanned activity can sometimes interfere with your scheduled session. If this is the case, you may receive a message from your teacher letting you know that your pupil is not available for tutoring on that day. A good rule, however, is to always call the classroom unless you hear otherwise from the teacher. Consistent tutoring is very important to your pupil's reading success. For those times when your pupil is not available for tutoring, consider signing up for a one-off session on another day that week. If you find that you have not had an opportunity to tutor your pupil for 2 or more weeks, please report this information to the support team or in the feedback form so that we can investigate further. During the school year, when geography and COVID permit, we encourage tutors to take advantage of 2 opportunities to meet with their pupil, the meet and greet and the year-end celebration. The meet and greet typically takes place in November and December and is a short one-on-one informal visit where you and your fellow tutors can travel to your assigned school to meet the classroom teacher and say hello to your pupil. At the end of each year, we encourage our volunteer tutors to visit their school and celebrate the great reading work done with their pupil during the school year. Please remember that while we actively discourage you from taking an individual present for your pupil, whole class gifts or healthy snacks are very welcome. This is a wonderful event for teachers, tutors and pupils, and you won't want to miss it. For tutor teams who are not able to travel to the school, we will attempt to organise a virtual meeting so you can see your pupil if the school is able to facilitate this. We've now reached the end of your TutorMate training. We hope you enjoyed it. Do remember that you have access to all this content as well as frequently asked questions in our knowledge base. Thank you for taking the time to learn about our programme. Please take a moment to fill in the feedback questionnaire at the end of this training.